mistake here, that I'm going to make a big mistake here, and that you guys aren't going to approve of me, right? Right. That's the reality. That's the truth. That's how fear shows up in my life. Fear shows up in these crazy stories, right? It's a narrative that I've got going on in my head. And, sometimes I don't know, sometimes that was a narrative that was given to me by somebody else, or sometimes it's just a narrative that I've created on my own. I don't always know where it comes from, but I can tell you this. I am driven by fear, right? When I first came into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, if you said that I was a fear-based alcoholic, I would have gotten very aggressive with you and said, I don't fear anything. But the reality is that I am a fear-based alcoholic and I react aggressively, right? And it showed up throughout my entire inventory. So let's go to the reading here. It says, notice the word fear is bracketed alongside the difficulties with Mr. Brown, Mrs. Jones, the employer, and the wife. Okay. So if we go back over to page 65, we're going to see that they're talking about that in the third column, the affects my column. So we're just going to take a quick look at Mr. Brown. It says, Mr. Brown, his attention to my wife. And then let's just shoot over to the affects my. What's that effect? Well, obviously, that's going to affect his sex relations. That's going to affect his self-esteem. And there's fear in there. So when I did my inventory, the way that I did it was I took a look at all of these things in my third column, everything that was being affected, and I found what the fear was. And that's what I took over to my fear inventory. It's going to give us a better description of how to write this inventory in the following paragraph. But I want to jump back to page 67. So it says, this short word somehow touches about every aspect of our lives. It was an evil and corroding thread. The fabric of our existence was shot through with it. See, now, when I first read that, I could not identify with that. That doesn't mean that this isn't true. I just didn't identify with this the first read because I didn't think that I had any fear whatsoever. But I was sadly mistaken. I was sadly mistaken. My life was driven and consumed and dominated by fear. It set in motion trains of circumstances which brought us misfortune we felt we didn't deserve. Here's this next sentence. This is a kicker. But did not we ourselves set the ball rolling? Oh, mama. Oh, mama. That is a big one right there. When, with this inventory, with the fear, with these fears, with the resentment inventory, we've got those four questions in the resentment inventory. Where was I selfish, dishonest, self-seeking, and frightened, right? And then there's a fifth question that sums all of it up. And it tells us what we have to do. We set aside the other person entirely, their part, and we resolutely look for our own part, right? Where were we to blame? If I haven't found where I'm to blame, I've missed something. And this is the same thing with these fears. If I can't find where I'm to blame, not necessarily for why I have the fear, but for the way that I behave with the fear, setting that ball in motion, causing that harm, whether it be to myself or to somebody else, I've missed it. That's what I need to identify. So it says, but did we not ourselves set the ball rolling? Sometimes we think fear ought to be classed with stealing. It seems to cause more trouble. So what I want to do is go back over to page 65 and take a look at this resentment with Mr. Brown and his attention to his wife. And then I'm going to share a resentment that I had with my wife, okay, that is very, very similar in many ways. So, and then I'll share exactly how it affected me and how I was able to be set free from this and recognize that it was fear that caused all of this. All right. So we got Mr. Brown. So he's pissed at Mr. Brown because of his attention to his wife. That affects his sex relations. Now, I would ask myself, how would that affect my sex relations if another man was giving, special attention to my wife? Well, it's going to affect my sex relations because I'm afraid my wife's going to be attracted to him and want to run off and have an affair, right? Now, perhaps whatever it is, maybe my relationship is already somewhat strained because of my drinking or because of my other behaviors, then my wife and I are not as intimate as I might like to think we should be, right? And therefore, she's not feeling safe and comfortable with me, right? So my sex relations are already affected. Now, she may be getting this attention from Mr. Brown. It doesn't mean that she wants to go off with Mr. Brown or not, but in my mind, my fear is telling me She's left me. She's having an affair with Mr. Brown. I'm going to lose my wife. I'm going to lose my house. I'm going to lose my children. I got to give up 50% at a minimum of everything that I have because of that guy over there. He won't mind his own dang business and stay out of my life. Stay away from my wife, buddy. Right? But the reality is that I've started this whole thing rolling. See, so what happens is this. And maybe there's really nothing going on. Maybe there's no attention going on there in the first place. I don't know. I don't know specifically with this one. That's why I want to share about one with my wife, which is very similar to this. Now, my wife left me. She was my girlfriend at the time. She left me and she left with our son, right? And my resentment read like this: Kim, resentful at her for leaving me and kidnapping my son. Yeah, yeah, that's a heavy one, right? So then I go into the third column. What's that effect? Well, I have it written down right here. I did a little bit of it here. It says, affects my self-esteem, my security, personal relations, sex relations, and my ambitions. You can tick off every single one of the boxes and create another 150 and tick those off too. Every single aspect of my life was affected by this. But when I got into the turnarounds, okay, this is what started to happen. I started to realize, here we go, over here on page 67. It says, resolutely looking for our mistakes. Where had we been selfish? Well, I can tell you where I was selfish. I wanted all of my wife's attention, right? Because, see, I need that attention. I need that type of security. I need that type of attention to make me feel whole, to make me feel okay, to make me feel secure. And if you don't give me all of your attention, and you somehow manage to give some attention to somebody else, that means you don't love me as much as I love you, and you're probably going to want to leave me. And possibly that may be because they're going to get into your head and tell you why you should leave me, right? So it's already starting to spin here. So I want all of your attention. When you don't give it to me, I react. How do I react? I'll give you the cold shoulder. I may be snippy with you. I may intentionally run late. I may just blow you off and leave you standing there to keep you, knock you back on your heels, to make you think that I don't care as much as you care. So maybe you'll get a little insecure and then want more attention from me. Then therefore, I'm going to feel more secure because now you're begging for more attention from me. You see what a manipulation game this whole deal is? That's the way that I lived, guys. That's the way that I lived. And I wouldn't have known it until I did this inventory. And that was based in fear, right? I'm going to get further into that. Then it says dishonest. Where was I dishonest? You know what I never told my wife? I never told her in the beginning. You know what? I think you are absolutely stunningly beautiful and too darn good looking for me. I think you are way too smart for me. I think you are so you are so far out of my league that the competition, I can't stand up to the competition. You must be delusional, woman. You will wake up one day and realize what a loser I am and you will walk away. I know your parents are in your ears. I know your siblings are in your ears. All of your friends are in your ears. Dump the loser, right? See, I never tell them this. I never tell them this. I walk into the relationship dishonestly. I put on a really, really good show for about 4 or 5 days because that's about as long as I can keep it up. I can't maintain it that long, right? And then things start slipping. And then once you start to have feelings for me, and I'm aware that you have feelings for me, and I've got a little bit of a foothold, then I can start that little bit of that little manipulation game to try to gain some ground. Now, I'm not doing this intentionally to hurt anybody. I am doing this strictly out of just defective instincts inside of me because I am overwhelmed with fear. Overwhelmed with fear. Now, let's go a little bit further. It says we resolutely look for our mistakes where we've been selfish, dishonest, self-seeking. What are the actions that I take, right? Now I'm going to take some crazy actions in this. I'm going to make crazy demands for all of your attention when I'm with you. What I don't want you to do is to recognize anybody. If we go out in the public, I'm so insecure, I cannot have you looking at another man. You see another man, I'm telling you, I'm going to get jacked up. My back, I'm telling you, I will. I may even want to fight that dude, but I'll probably just take it out on you. And I am the type of guy, not anymore, grace of God, but I am the type of guy to turn around and look at her and say, "Oh, I bet you want to him, you effing, all of those ugly things." I went there. I'm not proud of it. I'm just being honest with you. It's a big book study, and I'm here to be honest with you guys. And hopefully, some of you guys will be able to identify with. But that's where I went. That's the type of person that I am. I wasn't raised to be that way, but that's what untreated alcoholism does to me. That's what happens to me when all of my instincts are threatened this way, because I am maladjusted to life and I don't have that relationship with God yet. So let's move on a little bit. And then it says, where and frightened. What am I frightened of? Holy cow. I'm going to tell you what I'm frightened of. I'm frightened she is going to leave me. I'm frightened I'm going to be alone forever. I'm afraid that I'm going to die alone. I'm afraid I'll never get married. I'm afraid I'll never have children. I'm afraid I'm going to be cheated on. I'm afraid there's always going to be someone smarter than me, better looking than me, richer than me, stronger than me, faster than me. And I will never, ever, ever be able to add up. And you will leave me. You will leave me cold. And I treated this woman so horribly that what I forced her to do was, while pregnant, to leave me and to leave the country to return to Ireland to her family to get away from me because I was an animal. I left her with no other choice to do that. Now, when I look at my resentments, it looks a little bit different. She didn't kidnap my child. She protected our child. That's what she did. She ran for her life and she had every reason to do it. And I gave it to her. See, if we go back down to that paragraph here on the bottom of 67, it says, um, it set in motion trains of circumstances which brought us misfortune we felt we didn't deserve. She leaves me. I'm brokenhearted. I am absolutely devastated. I am in a puddle on the ground, crying, talking to God, saying, "How could you do this to me? Oh my God, I loved her so much." Blah blah blah. All of that garbage, And if me now, if I were there looking back at the position I'm in now, I'd have kicked me and said, "Get off your butt, you whiny little baby. You did all of this." That's the truth. I can see it now. But at the time, I couldn't see where it says this next sentence, but did not we ourselves set the ball rolling? Of course I did. Of course I did. I set the whole thing in motion. I left her with no other choice. No other choice. But to see this in and of itself isn't going to be enough. Let's continue reading. It says, sometimes we think fear ought to be classed with stealing. It seemed to cause more trouble. Holy cow, did it cause trouble? Not only did it cause trouble for me, not only did it cause trouble for her, it caused trouble for my son. It caused trouble for her family. It caused trouble for everybody. It caused trouble for my family. Now, my family's brokenhearted because they don't have their grandson here. Their family over there is like, what are we going to do? We got this pregnant woman coming over here that's a single mom and so on and so on. What are we going to do with all of this? Right? Nobody knows what to do. She's brokenhearted. I'm brokenhearted, and I'm totally deluded. Totally fit. And it caused all of this trouble. What did it rob me of? Robbed me of being there when my son was born. That's what fear did. I wasn't able to be there through that entire pregnancy, right? And watch my son to be born. I wasn't there to help raise him. Not because I didn't want to be, but fear robbed me of all of that. That's what fear would do. Know what else it did? It destroyed that relationship I had with that woman. Years of that relationship that I could have had with her, that I wanted to have with her, but I couldn't because fear wouldn't allow it. Fear simply would not allow it to happen. I was dominated by that fear, right? So I've got to be rid of this fear, right? So when I can go back and look at this whole resentment here, all I have to ask myself now is, how did fear set this whole ball in motion? See, I was dominated with fear. I didn't have the faith in God. I didn't even know really about talking to God about these things. I didn't have the courage to say to Kim, listen, I'm really digging you, but honestly, I feel like you're going to wake up one day and you're not going to want to be with me. You're going to recognize what a loser I am, and so on and so on. Years later, I was able to do that with her, and she simply just grabbed me by both of my cheeks and laughed and gave me a kiss. She said, "You're being ridiculous, right? You're just being ridiculous." But see, I could have done that years earlier, but I didn't have the courage because see, now if I go ahead and tell her that, the fear is now I'm vulnerable. Now she knows she can take advantage of me. Now she's going to think of me as a weakling. Now everybody's going to laugh at me because, of course, she's going to run back and tell everybody, you know what Eric said? He's afraid of this. He's afraid of that. He's nothing but a weakling. Totally dominated with fear. Totally dominated with fear. That's what started this whole ball rolling. So I got the fear in the beginning of this that she's going to see an attractive man. She's going to want to leave me for him. She's going to find a smarter man. She's going to want to leave me for him. All of this stuff started, began, and ended as a result of fear. Every single one of these. It has dominated my life from day one. Let's move on. So this is the how and why of it. This is the course we're going to take. It says we're going to review our fears thoroughly. Thoroughly. We're not just going to peek at them, but we're going to be thorough, right? Do we all know what thorough is? I think we all know what thorough is. We can look it up if we need to, but we know what thorough is. We're not just going to, run our hands underwater. We're going to use hot water, soap. We're going to rub these suckers. We're going to get the brush out, scrub our nails, and we are going to towel dry off, thoroughly cleaned. That's what we're going to do. We're going to go through this thoroughly. We put them on paper, even though we had no resentment in connection with them. See, I didn't necessarily have a resentment in connection with my feeling less than and inadequate. There wasn't necessarily, but resentment was born from that. That's for sure. So we asked ourselves why we had them. Now, here's this great question. Why do I have this fear? Now, there's two ways I can look at this, and I like to look at it both of these ways. The first one, obviously, is we're going through this. We know that we're trying to gain access to a power greater than ourselves, right? I know that I'm trusting and relying upon myself, right? And that's failing me. This is part of the reason why I have it. But I also like to look back and ask myself, when's the first time that I experienced this fear? I mean, like this has been with me, this type of fear has been with me all of my life. So when I look at this, I can tell you when I ask myself why I had this one particular fear, this fear of abandonment, this fear of being left. And I took some time to think about it. And what I discovered was that when I was a young kid, and hang in there with me, when I was a young kid, my mother and I were very, very close. I just clung to her, and she knew that for my health, for my development, she was going to need gain some separation from me so that I can grow a little bit more independent. She takes me off to nursery school one day. I don't know that I'm going to nursery school. I don't know anything about what's going on. All I know is I walk into this building and there's a couple women there. They're kind of talking, they're chatting, I'm hanging out, and my mom leaves. And I look out the window and I see her walking down the sidewalk, and I go into immediate panic because she has left me behind. And I run out of that building. I run through those doors, down the sidewalk, and I grab her. And by the time I'm there, I've got tears coming down my cheeks. I'm overwhelmed with emotion, and I am angry at her because my best friend, my mom, my higher power, my God, just abandoned me. And she marches me back in there in a loving way, and she reintroduces me to these people. And now she tells me she's leaving. Now she's telling me she's leaving me there. All these emotions, everything that I just showed her, how brokenhearted I am, is not enough for her to want to keep me. That's how this is landing. And she is leaving me. And when I tell you that I'm a fear-based alcoholic that reacts aggressively, one of the girls that worked there came over with a Dixie cup of milk and a chocolate chip cookie, and I kicked her square in the face with my leather buckle shoe. That's what I did. That's how I react. Don't try to appease me with milk and cookies, toots. Ain't gonna fly, right? I've been abandoned. Not happening. And it was in that day, I'm telling you, whether I consciously made the decision or not, I made a decision that I could not trust my mom, I could not trust my higher power, and that I would always be abandoned. Do not ever let yourself be vulnerable again. So when we get into this next question, it says, we asked ourselves why we had them. Now I know why I've got this fear of abandonment. I know why I react the way that I do. I know when it first started. Wasn't it because self-reliance failed us? Well, I mean, at that time, this is what happened. I made a decision to rely on myself from that point on. That is for sure. I was not going to rely on my mother to keep me safe and protected, and I was not going to rely on anybody else. And I sure as heck wasn't going to be vulnerable with anybody. I wasn't going to trust you. You could tell me how much I could trust you, but I'm not going to trust you. No way. You'll pack me up and you'll ship me off to somebody else like my mother did, right? I hope that's making sense. That's where this stuff goes. And from that point on, every relationship that I got into with a woman, you had to be out here no matter how much I cared about you. And I will never let you in. I will never tell you the truth. I would never let any true intimacy come into our relationship other than physical. And then the physical was just physical. It wasn't even true intimacy because I wasn't capable of being able to be there, because I was never going to allow myself to go there with another person. Wasn't going to happen, right? And that's why I destroyed every single relationship that I was in, every single one. Kim wasn't the first. She wasn't an anomaly. She was just another one of them. Every single one of them. She just happened to be the one that really truly won my heart, right? The rest of them, but it goes on and on. Now this fear shows up in so many different areas of my life. I got 6 minutes left. Um, so it says self-reliance was good as far as it went, but it didn't go far enough. It doesn't go far enough. I can't. So what do I have to do? I'm going to start withdrawing. I start withdrawing from life. I start withdrawing from relationships. There may be someone that I want to get involved with, but no way. I am not going to take a chance and be in that relationship. I'm not going to do it. I simply won't do it because I know what's going to happen. I'm going to get hurt and I'm not going to take that chance. You're going to lie. You're going to cheat. You're going to leave me, blah, 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 blah. You name it. And where is God in all of this, guys? There's no God in any of this. There's no God in any of this. You want to know what's there? It's Eric playing God, relying on capital R, reason, God. I'll figure it out. I'm going to trust and rely upon this, right? Now, let me finish this rest of this paragraph. So some of us once had great self-confidence, but it didn't go far enough. Some of us once had great, I just read that self-confidence, but didn't fully solve the fear problem or any other. When it made us cocky, it was worse. Okay. So I'm going to talk about a couple of other fears that you know, they show up in so many different ways. Let's just talk about education for an example. See, I'm not going to tell you how smart I am because I really don't know how smart I am because I never fully applied myself in any area of my life. That's the truth. Now, if I want to get really honest with you, I can tell you why I didn't fully apply myself. See, I didn't know it back then, but I know it now. The reason I never fully applied myself in any area of my life was because I was 100% confident that I was going to fail. I was positive that I was going to fail. I was positive that I was stupid while having no knowledge of being stupid. No one ever told me that I was stupid. No one ever told me that I couldn't do these things, but I was convinced that I was stupid and that I couldn't do these things. And then I couldn't bear taking a chance to do something and then failing because that would confirm that my suspicion is 100% true that I am just stupid, right? I couldn't bear that. So the best thing to do is just don't even try, shrug it off, have an attitude, say, I don't care. I don't care about school. I don't care about this, blah, 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 blah. And what am I doing? I'm setting myself up for complete failure. Really, what happens is that I have fear that has me in a state of paralysis and I can't even try. I can't even try. And it's robbing me. It's robbing me of an education. It's robbing me of just, so many different things, right? It just robs me of the education, the relationships, the family, so on and so on. And what am I trusting in? What am I trusting in? I'm trusting in and relying upon self, that God of reason. That is the nastiest higher power I've ever experienced in my life. Now, I've had multiple higher powers. The first one I told you about was my mother. When she was done, it was on me. Then drugs and alcohol came in. They became my higher power. Then women came in. They collectively, as a whole, became a higher power, right? Then money comes in. That becomes a higher power. Flashy things start coming in. That becomes a higher power. Prestige, social security, all of these things become a higher power, but they all fail me. None of them will fully solve my fear problem. I have a God-shaped hole in my heart, and the only thing that can fill that hole is God. The only thing. The other things will temporarily masquerade, right? But I suffer from hedonistic adaptation, which is I need the next new shiny thing. Once I get this shiny thing, it's really great. But then the shine kind of wears off after 2 days. Now I need the next one. I need the next one, right? And I have to continue to get it, right? So there's a temporary patch. You make 100 grand, you got 100 grand in the bank. You say, man, I've been waiting for the day. And you see that 100 grand, and then you think, be better if I had 200 grand, right? I mean, 200 grand is definitely a lot more secure than 100 grand, right? And then when you become a millionaire, you're like, multi-millionaire is definitely better than just, I mean, where are you going with $1 million? I mean, you don't want to spend it because then you're not a millionaire anymore. You want to stay a millionaire, right? Because there's all this insanity that goes on with this stuff. Where is God in any of this? Right? I am maladjusted to life. I am an outright mental defect in full flight from reality. I am trusting and relying upon self, right? But we made this decision back in the third step that we were going to stop playing God. So for with these fears, when we get into this next paragraph, we're going to do it next week. When we get into this paragraph, what I really need is I need that foundation, that cornerstone to be securely in place, right? As best it possibly can. Because if I'm gonna forgive me, forgive me. I don't want to offend anybody, but I've been hearing a lot about this lately, and I'm gonna go there. If my higher power is a hanger or a doorknob and my life is on the line, I am in serious trouble. I am in serious, serious trouble. Okay. So if I think I'm going to be able to trust in an inanimate object that has no heartbeat, no intelligence, no nothing, and has no power to do anything except the power I give it to do it, and I better hang that shirt up properly, otherwise the shirt's going to fall off the hanger and I'm going to blame the hanger, right? You see what I'm saying? It ain't going to work, man. I better have my cornerstone fixed in place. Otherwise, that decision I made in the third step, taking these fears there in this next paragraph, because it's going to tell us how we're going to do this, right? I'm going to have a struggle and I'm going to continue to rely on myself. I'm going to continue to rely on that capital R reason. If I'm not careful, it will subtly, sneakily take me round and round and round, and I'll start thinking this deal doesn't work. The problem is I wasn't thorough with the first three or four proposals. My name's Eric. I'm an alcoholic. Thank you so much for letting me share with you guys.